and welcome to the India Development Debate. I'm Nayantara Rai. This is massive news coming in from Pricewaterhouse. The Securities Apellate Tribunal, the SAT as it's called, quashed the market regulator SEBI'S order in the massive 7,800 crore rupee Satyam computer scam. Remember, SEBI had banned Pricewaterhouse for auditing listed companies for a period of 2 years. The Appellate Tribunal body has ruled the market regulator SEBI cannot encroach the territories of other regulators and industry bodies. In short, the market regulator has no business to talk about the quality of audits. SAT maintained there is no shred of evidence that Pricewaterhouse colluded with the management of Satyam. Went on to say SEBI has no jurisdiction banning any audit firm, as that is the sole prerogative of the ICAI. Pricewaterhouse was the auditor for Satyam Computer Systems when Chairman B. Ramalinga Raju on January 8, 2009 admitted to a fraud of 5,000 crore rupees. Later, SEBI pegged that figure at 7,800 crore rupees. In a completely unprecedented development, the centre superseded the board, took over Satyam and later sold it to Tech Mahindra. SEBI still has the option to move the Supreme Court as its appeal. But what is this going to mean for corporate India? What is it going to mean for the Big Four? That was a term that had initially actually been coined by Ramalinga Raju himself. Since then, we've had 9 years later, the INFS scam. And since then, the Ministry of Corporate Affairs has also moved to ban the auditors of INFS. Incidentally, they are also part of the Big Four. That and more coming up on this edition of the India Development Debate. Joining me right here for the debate is Vivek Mehra, former M&A partner at PwC. In fact, I remember he had become almost a public face for PwC around the time of the Satyam scam. Also joining us is Vaibhav Kakkar, partner at LNL. And joining us shortly will be Shailesh Haribhakti. You see him very often, and a torchbearer of sorts for corporate governance. Good evening, gentlemen. Thanks for joining us. Vivek Mehra, I can see you've got a big smile on your face. This is something that you have been maintaining now since 2009. Does today's order, I believe you would be seeing it as a vindication of sorts. What, if I could get your initial reaction?
I'm delighted. I'm delighted that SAT has finally overturned the SEBI order. I believe there was no connivance, there was no fraud on behalf of the auditors. There may have been negligence, and for that you actually don't punish the whole firm, and the whole firm has languished for so many years because of this situation. I'm very happy with this order, very happy.
Okay, Vivek Mehra, you are indeed happy, but if I could, talk to you, you're also a chartered accountant. The ICAI's jurisdiction has been made very clearly by the SAT order. Before you pop the bubbly, you know very well how often how SEBI's orders are overturned at SAT, the kind of percentages we're talking about, how we typically see the market regulator also moving the court. Do you think you'll go to bed tonight believing that this is over, or a part of you is convinced that there is going to be an appeal?
Speculate on that. I think SAT has very clearly said that the order of the Bombay High Court is final and accepted both by SEBI and PwC. And the Bombay High Court said SEBI has jurisdiction if there is fraud or connivance on behalf of the auditors, and SAT has very clearly said that there is none. At some point I've even read the charge sheets, and there's not a iota of evidence which suggests that the auditors have taken any illegal gratification or they have got assets disproportionate to their known sources of income or anything, and therefore I think the charge of fraud. There was negligence, yes. Accounting standards were not followed, yes. But I don't think there was complicity. And since the Bombay High Court order is binding on both the parties, maybe there would be quietus to this matter. I think on a practical basis, The firm has already suffered more or less all of its punishment of not accepting listed company audits. Nothing much more would be served now. It will just create more uncertainty, and I think there's time that that our regulators bring in certainty in businesses, in how businesses are run, how audits are done. So, if you have a train wreck, people die, you don't close down the Indian railways. You punish people who are responsible for that tragedy. Here you close down an entire firm. Many of the partners, majority of the partners joined the firm after this event. So you're punishing a lot of people. You're punishing an institution. You should punish individuals responsible for dereliction of duty and not the whole institution. So I hope and pray that good sense would prevail and there would be quietus to this matter. The firm has already suffered and there's not much left to take it to a appellate situation since
I take your point, and that's something I'm hoping to discuss
through
the next 30 minutes, Vivek Mehra. That is something I'm hoping to discuss in detail over the next 30 minutes. But unfortunately, what we have seen in India, and as per law, it is usually the top management and the CEOs who also sometimes have to pay penance, whether it is a cinema hall that is burnt and the promoters are sent, which we saw in New Delhi, or if, unfortunately, there's a case of molestation or rape of a BPO employee where the CEO has to go behind bars. We've seen all of that. We'll get to it in just a bit. Vaibhav Kakkar, if I could come to you now, and yes, we saw Satyam, that was in 2009, but then we saw INFS in 2018. We saw the government once again supersede a board. They're trying to monetize. We've seen action by the Ministry of Corporate Affairs against the Big Four, whether it's a Deloitte or whether it's EY and all of that. What is today's SAT order going to mean going forward, particularly with INFS? I want to get your thoughts in on that. That has, really been also the start of the economy going into doldrums.
Well, first of all, Nandar, I'd like to congratulate Vivek and rest of the folks at PwC for what is a very good order that they've got in their favor. I think what today's order means is a red herring for all the regulators and the investigation authorities. That, while of course a lot of these investigations are still ongoing, ultimately, if there isn't direct or for that matter a shred of evidence which links up to issues of conspiracy, issues of fraud, then one must sort of reassess the strategy and not try and sort of take the entire boat to sink. That sort of an approach post 2018 and the INFS saga, where we have seen that just about anybody and everybody that has been involved in the whole INFS issues, whether it has been the credit rating agencies, whether it has been the auditors, they're all being painted with the same brush. Professional negligence is sometimes being misconstrued as part of larger criminal conspiracies, alluding to evidences where there might not exist any, which might not actually hold good in a court of law. And unfortunately, the way things play out, and as Vivek was alluding to, in India, the process of the whole system itself becomes sometimes the punishment. So while SAT might have actually held the ruling in favor of PwC, but as Vivek was explaining, they actually have borne the brunt of the punishment irrespective. And that is unfortunately the situation in the country, but it's a good ruling to at least give some guidance to the regulators and the investigators that do not paint everybody with the same brush, and professional negligence by professionals cannot be and should not be construed in the same manner as issues of fraud. Because now what is invariably happening is in every instance of a scam being unearthed, there are actors, there is the senior management that is involved. The key question is that whether the auditors, did they do something which they were actively conniving in, or was it a mere case of oversight? And remember, what the SAT has ruled is what has been the jurisprudence all along, that the auditors are meant to be watchdogs. They are meant to do verification.
So are you saying that this SAT order, can this SAT order, Vaibhav, let me put to you very clearly, Can today's SAT order have an implication on the Ministry of Corporate Affairs stance when it comes to banning auditors post the INFS debacle, if you go by today's order?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Obviously, the order is only binding when the parties are affected to the dispute. But what I'm alluding to is that this is a sign that where there are issues of negligence, to conflate that with issues of fraud may not eventually have, any sort of relevance in ultimately to be proved in a court of law. And I think to that extent, it is an indicator to the government that they must tread carefully and not sort of get into issues of regulatory overreach as they did in the case of Satyam. Because look at it, that, the issue happened in 2009. SEBI issued an order as a remedial measure. The relevant section under which they issued this order was meant to remedy and sort of prevent further issues to happen in the securities market, and they issue an order 8 years later under that provision. That kind of regulatory overreach is eventually likely to be overturned. And that is a signal that the government should sort of take cue from in how they react in the INFS issue.
Okay,
and
I take your point. I'm going to now go to my next panelist.
Negligence with issues of fraud.
The question I was actually asking you, Weber, I was actually asking you if a precedent has been created. I'll come back to you on that one. Shailesh Haribhakti, from what Weber has said and what Vivek Mehra started off by saying, and if you will read between the lines, how is this not actually a case where we might see again a precedent being created in India for a class action suit? Look at the kind of wording that we saw from Vivek Mehra saying, whatever had to happen, happened, we stand vindicated. What's to stop PW from doing that? Because let's not forget, class action suits also became a reality in India. We have not seen it take place. It became a reality in India after Satyam Computers.
Well, let me put a little different perspective to this whole thing. I think what we must take away from this judgment are three big issues. One is that the timeliness of the process of taking a call by the regulators and by virtually the whole system has to be such that it does not seem like a delay which makes the punishment inevitable, as has happened in the Pricewaterhouse case. They've already finished more than a year and a half of the 2-year period, and now they have been vindicated that the 2-year ban ought not to have been done. The second big lesson that I'm seeing here is that the trust of the people who are relying on an independent opinion by the auditors, namely the investing public, the public at large, the government and everybody, should be maintained, and therefore it becomes the obligation on the part of people who are holding this trust to enhance their processes, to get better processes in place, to apply technology, to do things which would enhance the whole quality and therefore the trust in the opinion. And the third big takeaway for me is that there needs to be a clarity on who has to deal with a particular situation. Here, the order seems to suggest that the punishment which was to be given to the members who were delinquent, so to speak, has already been meted out to them, which is that the partners of Pricewaterhouse who were involved in the Satyam audit have been banned for life, and fines have been paid by them as well. And therefore, this is also trying to clarify how do you make sure which regulator should take what stand in a particular circumstance. And I would not generalize to pull away or take away any big lessons for how things will evolve in the future, because the facts and circumstances of each case will determine their outcome. So these are the perspectives.
Okay, so let me go to Vivek Mehra with this now. Vivek Mehra, if I was to read the verdict, it says that it very clearly says here there is no shred of evidence that the auditors fabricated fudged or were in collusion with the management of Satyam Computer Services. The ruling went on to say that SEBI in fact has no jurisdiction banning any audit firm, and that is the sole prerogative of the Indian Institute of Chartered Accountants of India. The same ruling says negligence cannot amount to misconduct, and SEBI action based on no direct evidence cannot be maintained. If the audit of Satyam was conducted in a careless or reckless way by the audit firm, then action can only be taken under the CA Act by the institute and not SEBI. You know, I don't want to be dramatic and say hold your hand on your heart, but I've got to ask you this. What has been the role of the ICAI since 2009? We've seen massive lapses. They've not even been able to rein in the auditors who think their job is done by simply resigning from various listed entities on the NSE and the BSE, bearing absolutely no accountability. I want to now also talk to you about how this mess is finally going to end. Yes, you've got maybe an order which was all over the place, which has been quashed, but perhaps it's not a done deal, and it does ambiguity still not stay?
You see, I mean, the regulatory process for disciplinary action, I think from Institute also has changed. The law has changed recently, and those powers lie with a council now, which is separate from the institute itself. Yes, maybe the self-regulation that was envisaged under the Institute of Chartered Accountants Act did not pan out in a very effective manner. But you know, I don't think anybody wants to play that game and say, look, I'm going to commit murder here and I'll get away with it. No. No serious professional does that, and therefore I don't think anybody would say that, hey, this SAT order is great, now I can do everything wrong and nothing will happen to me. I don't think that's the way it is taken. Whether it's action of the institute, whether it's action of SEBI, the fact that something goes wrong and the firm is named, that itself is a great punishment. You must remember that. The punishment is not just by some action happening by SEBI 7-8 years later. The punishment starts with your being involved in some wrongdoing. Because ultimately it's your reputation
so,
that is important.
Vivek Mehra, I asked a question to Shailesh Haribhakti. Let me pose it to you. I know you have now retired and you've kind of moved on. You're on independent, you're on boards and all of that. But I'm sure after today's order, it's not possible that you've not been speaking to your former colleagues at PW. So having said that, it's over. If nobody appeals, would you not, because you're bringing up reputation as well, would you not want to restore that? Would you not look at action at all against the market regulator? You've lost business too.
I don't think it works like that. I believe that's not what we are going to do. We only hope, I only hope and pray, and for the interest of this country, that there should be quietus to matters. You can't have such prolonged uncertainty and litigation going on and on and on. It has to be quick, it has to be sharp, it has to be effective. You cannot let these things, I mean, PwC today is the audit wings are far superior, as Shailesh said, that you need to improve your systems. We improved our systems in the firm phenomenally. And what happens? A far more improved firm is banned from auditing companies 9 years later. I mean, that is ridiculous. So you're not effectively dealing with an issue. You're just doing a delayed response to something which power you believe you have, but it's not doing any service to any community, any investor, any business. So what I'm saying is you need to have a quick action, you need to have a quick response, you need to do things and bring quietus to the matter. It cannot get elongated forever.
Everybody wants
and ever.
Effectiveness and quickness.
So I hope and pray that there will be quietus to this matter.
Everybody wants effectiveness, quickness, none of that red tape. Okay, Vaibhav Kakkar, You're the lawyer here. Now, you say you began by saying it's a good order. The ICAI doesn't even enjoy the kind of powers that this particular order of the Securities Appellate Tribunal is talking about. How am I supposed to reconcile that by saying this is a good order?
No, the order is a good order because what it does is it actually disciplines SEBI as the capital market regulator to not overreach. And secondly, what it does is it actually lays down one very important principle, and I can't overemphasize the importance of it, is that issues of professional negligence ought not to be confused with issues of fraud, which require mens rea, which require intent, which require active manipulation. And if those ingredients are missing, then let us deal with the issue objectively and not throw the baby out of the bathwater, as has happened in the past, as we are seeing things happen now. Mr. Shailesh Haribhakti was absolutely right that it would not be appropriate to do a generalization, and the matters are currently under investigation and are sub judice. But it's important to bear and take those principles out of it. As Vivek was mentioning, NFRA in its current avatar has all the powers. And I think the key question therefore lies that each time there will be a corporate scam, what would be your approach? Would you look at now introducing issues of criminality, look at introducing issues of disrupting by banning people, or would you work with the relevant stakeholders to improving the system and going after specific individuals? Fun fact, entire 2008 subprime crisis, not a single credit rating agency in the US and most of the auditing firms continue doing their business as usual. Yes, the regulators fined them. Yes, there was an improvement in the processes, but you did not see the kind of disruption as is being currently looked upon, or we are staring at post ILFS, and what we saw in the case of Satyam.
In fact, it's going to be 1 year of the INFS crisis later this month. Shailesh Haribhakti, I'm going to give you the final question. I'll give one final comment to Vivek Vera only because, he's been spearheading this fight for the last, since 2009. But Shailesh Haribhakti, what is this going to mean for the MCA order against a Deloitte, against an EY, against all of those auditors of INFS? Is this going to create a precedent of sorts? How do you think this is going to pan out? Because I think, we need to talk about the future as well.
Yes, and I will answer your question in a straightforward way. I think it will have a serious influence on the decision as to whether a whole firm should be punished or the people who are isolated and have been participants in the particular activity should be punished. And I think what this order does is creates a good precedent that you need to get down to isolating who is really responsible and making sure that the punishment is borne by those who are responsible for the act. So I think this is going to have an overarching influence. But I want to get back to your earlier question of class action suits. And when they arise, that's when the entire might of the firm will be put to test, because a class action suit can be dramatic, and also the insurance that people will be able to take will be put to test. So we are now getting into a completely different territory where quality standards of making sure that ethics and good practices are continually followed will become the order of the day. And I think that will lead to a far more trustworthy environment, and people will all take actions to make sure that the system preserves its sustainability.
I take your point. And because I'm running out of time, I said I would give the final comment to Vivek. One of the biggest lessons I'm sure that PW has had to learn, after INFS, the big four, all of them have to learn, is how do you keep the bad eggs out? While all of you are making the case that don't punish the entire firm for a few bad individuals, have we seen any strengthening of measures since Satyam in audit firms to keep the bad eggs out? Because looking at INFS, it doesn't look like that. Looking at the recent blows to corporate governance, the number of scams that have been unearthed, doesn't seem like that. Have we missed the biggest lesson?
Let me tell you, I know for sure in PwC, the processes were increased and enhanced. The quality was enhanced multifold. And you know, sometimes what you call bad eggs, I wouldn't even say that. It happens out of, you should see the aura of a Satyam and what happened. It was a fraud committed by management, which kind of went under the radar screen. So yes, when you technically look at it, there is negligence, but Shailesh will bear me out. I don't think 99% of audit firms in India ever got direct confirmations from banks. They always got them from the management. And who would suspect that a company like Satyam would have fraudulent, forged fixed deposit receipts and bank statements? So, you know, yes, it was wrong. There should have been more skepticism in the audit. But that is what practice was. We are not going to party, we are going to pray that there is quietus to this matter. And I hope that the regulators will not hurt institutions, but will make sure that there's quick justice to the wrongdoer and not to a whole institution.
Why is it that regulators are not held accountable? It's not just the market regulator, but it's all regulators in the country who never have to ask a tough question to anyone. But I think we're going to have to leave that debate for another time. I'd like to thank all of you three gentlemen for joining us here on this edition of India Development Debate.